Welcome to Failing Up, a limited series from the shallow end about our collecting failures, how they impact us, and ultimately, how they help us better understand the card space. It's about the moments we need, even if we don't necessarily enjoy them in that moment. I'm Dave, and I wanted to do this series to help us all feel just a little less alone in this hobby. We've all made mistakes. No one is perfect, and maybe we can learn from each other. Today's guest is Robert at Robert M. Cards on Instagram, where his feed is full of some of the coolest game-worn cards you'll find. There was a time, a span of about 15 years, when Robert built the sort of collection many of us would love to have. Until one day, someone came along with an offer he couldn't refuse. Let's welcome into the series now Robert on Instagram. Robert is Robert M_cards. Robert, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for being here. Tell us about a choice you made in your collecting past that maybe you wish you had not.
The big one for me is I sold aside from one patch set that I'm still working on from 2005, I sold every baseball card I owned at the height of pricing in the COVID pandemic in 2020. I had a plan to move a bunch of stuff. I went and this was back, you could still get tables at shows relatively easily back then. And so there was a show in San Antonio, a couple hours north from me. And I drove up just for the day, drove up early that morning, had everything packed in, put it all out on the table, which is, I've never done that before, extremely unlike me. I don't know, I was there maybe 30 minutes and a guy walked by and somebody I knew walked by and was like, "Hey, are you interested in moving everything?" And you hear that question. I hadn't really thought about it that much. I was like, yeah, I thought I'd come, and if I moved a few PC cards, that's cool. Like, I could always get it back, but pricing was crazy, so I wasn't buying a ton. It was just, I've been in since 05 to 2020, 15 years solid. I'd worked at a card shop, so I had amassed, quite the collection. So it was a full 8-foot table with boxes and showcases. And anyway, we negotiated, and he paid me half cash there and wrote me a check for the other half. And I watched somebody pack up what I had been working on for 15 years. And then I sat in the car and rode home with myself and my thoughts for 2 hours after that, coming home with like nothing to unload, nothing to show off, nothing, whatever. And it's been one of those things that it didn't start immediately. I probably took like 6 months to digest everything. And then I started slowly putting the pieces back together, as far as like I bought a PC card and I was like, oh yeah, like I liked this feeling. And then, a few others. So now I've built myself back up, over the course of 4 or 5 years, since then, and everything. But it's one of those deals that, if I could do it again, I'd have said, I'd like to stay set up and just kind of see how things roll through the show or whatever. And maybe not taking that offer right off the top.
You mentioned it hit, over the course of a few months, it was sort of sunk in what you had done. What was that process like? What was that thought process like as you realized, I'm not a card collector right now?
Yeah. So, and like I said, that had been the first time for me in 15 years, solid, straight, no really time off, that I didn't have cards to go look at, that I couldn't pull a box down off the shelf and, thumb through, game used baseball stuff, that I couldn't jump on, and I'll age myself here if I haven't already, but like I couldn't get on the Beckett forums and go, talk to folks on there about what I had picked up, what I was trading, that kind of stuff. And so it kind of left like a void, if you will, of things that I used to do on a daily or every other day basis, whether that was, like I said, looking through my stuff, organizing it, putting it in different deals, showing it off to family and friends. Not that they cared, but just the enjoyment of having it. Um, but that isn't really, it wasn't the cards per se, and that was kind of the revolution of the process with me. It wasn't the cards per se that I missed. It was the memories, emotions, and stories tied to how I acquired those things. Because this was, a lot of these things were acquired pre Instagram days, pre. I mean, there's some of them like online trading, it was eBay stuff, but I worked at a card shop for several years. A lot of those were in person deals. I would set up at a lot of shows, they were interactions. Product used to be affordable. And so you could open a box for $150 to $200, and that was a fairly expensive box back then. And so I opened a lot. And so with friends pulling those cards, just the memories and the stuff that was associated with that is what I was like, oh man, like I wish I could get that card back. I remember I was with X, Y, and Z. We opened this box and we had this celebration about it. And oh, this was my first big pool. All of that stuff was like in that group that I sold. And that's what, like, really, after a while when it sank in, kind of gutted me a little bit.
I think that really goes to a part of the hobby that sometimes gets lost among things like the prices and the flipping, which is, like you mentioned, it's the memories, right? And it's also part of who you were, where you were collecting for 15 years up to that point. You worked at a card store. So there's professional ties, there's personal ties, and everything else. I imagine you probably, maybe I'm wrong, but you probably were not expecting that guy to walk up there that day in 2020 to make that kind of an offer. So you probably didn't have a whole lot of time to even consider the consequences of selling it.
Yeah, that's part of the pressure of an in-person transaction, right? From a card show perspective, if you message somebody about a card on Instagram and they respond with a price, you may get to put your phone down for a second and hop on a computer, look up some comps, think about it, mull it over, text your buddy, hey, what do you think about this? I have a chance to pick this up at X. Or I have a chance to sell this for this much money. You think that's a good move. When the other person's standing 2 feet away from you and got money in hand, really looking to make a deal. Yeah, it puts pressure for one, and then it really doesn't give you time to process it, and the emotions, right? That you think that you're like, oh yeah, it's just cardboard. I buy, sell, and trade cards all the time. Not a flipper at all, but but there's certain stuff that, like, I acquire it and I may show it off. I'll post it, and then it goes in a box, and like it may not be seen in the public eye again, other than it's on the internet forever. But as far as like getting it out, taking it somewhere, I don't do that. And so yeah, it happened fast. At the time, instantly in the moment, I was like, oh yeah, like perfect. This is great. Like I've got the cash that I've got cash in hand, picking up a check tomorrow. Like it's all is good with the world. Check clears the bank, money's deposited. You know what I mean? I'm happy. And then it's like, oh, hey, I'm going to go get oh, wait, no, I'm not going to go get my cards.
I imagine, well, I do have a couple of thoughts, but before we move off this part a little bit, you mentioned that you had the memories and all this stuff that was tied into the collection that you sold. But the cards themselves, are there any individual cards or runs or sets or anything that you kind of miss or wish that you still had?
Yeah. Let's see, three particular ones come to mind. And these aren't going to be huge cards, but they were just, so one of the cards that was in there was out of 2005 Donruss Champions. It was a Jeff Bagwell printing plate. And so when I moved to a different school in college, and that had a local card shop, and I had never lived in a town or I hadn't messed with cards since probably the early mid 90s. when I was in like middle school, high school, and I got out of it. And then in '05, I walked into this card shop and bought my first box of cards, and it was '05 Donruss Champions. And inside that box was the Jeff Bagwell printing plate. That was like my first pool that I had in the first box. And then back then, like printing plates had some value to them. Now they're, not as sought after as they were back then. But back then, like to hit a 101 printing plate, I'm from Texas, Houston guy I grew up watching with the Astros. Like I was super pumped. So that was one. Second one was out of, and these are all, older products, '05 Upper Deck Classics. And these were the ones, so I think it was like an autograph and a couple of jersey cards per box. Cheaper rip back then. I think it was like 120 a box, not much. Anyway, I pulled an Eddie Matthews cut signature out of there, and it was like hand numbered, maybe out of 32 or something like that. But what I really liked was the card itself had like a reddish looking border, and then there's a lithograph out there painting. I think it's Dick Perez painting or sketch of Eddie Matthews, and he signed a bunch of these that you can find them regularly out in public, but that's what the cut was from. Well, the cut had a lot of like red and orange, and it was like the signature was down around his legs and stuff, and so a lot of the colors on the cut matched the colors on the card. Like I was just in love with it when I pulled it, and like just in awe of this card. And so that one, and then the last one is this was out of '07 SP Legendary Cuts, and it was a Harry Carey cut signature. Announcer for the Cubs. I'm a Cubs fan. I didn't pull that one, but when my wife and I were dating at the time, we went to the National. I want to say right around that time, like '06, '07, somewhere in there. And I was teaching high school. She was a teacher's aide. We had just, were, looking at getting married. I didn't have a ton of money, but I saw that card at the National and I was out of cash. And I literally went, and it was in like the back corner of the room. I walked faster than I've ever walked in my life up to the front to the ATM, got out. I think it was like $150 for the card. It wasn't a bunch, which he sells for a lot more now, but got the cash out of the ATM and then sprinted back to that back corner. Couldn't get that money over to him fast enough, and was like, that was the most amazing thing that I had, pulled out of or gotten from that show. Did it with my wife. Like it was one of those things that, like, it just, again, back to memories about all three of those. And I've occasionally I'll dial up, looking for an Eddie Matthews cut that's just like that one that I got rid of, because I'd buy one. The Harry Careys, man, they come up very, very infrequently on eBay. Like when they're there, if they're priced somewhat decently, they're gone. I mean, before I even wake up to the notification that it's been listed. And they're anywhere between like $500 and $1,000 a piece now, which, again, I mean, the money, and that's fine, but like, I'd love to have that card back. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking like three positives though potentially come out of this. And I'm not just blowing smoke, but like one of them is you sold at the right time, at least, right?
Sure.
It was 2020, so yeah, you wish you hadn't, but at least it wasn't like 2011, right, or 2009. When things were down, or 2022 when things started going down as well. Like so at least there's that. One is that you realize what you miss, right? Like if you had sold it and hadn't thought about it, you think, what was I doing for 15 years? Oh, that was a strange part of my life, right? But you realize that you actually do like it. And then the third one that I want to ask you about is you are in the unique spot of being able to like rebuild, if you wanted to, almost from the ground up. So I guess I want to ask, because you collect again, how did you go about rebuilding your collection?
Yeah, we could do 5 more mistake podcasts on stuff I've done. Rebuilding, right? And it's one of those things, because you get Instagram is a beast. You get on and God, I see stuff and I'm like, oh man, gold prisms. Oh man, like numbered out of 50 PSA gold, this, shiny stuff, that. And so you deviate, right? And so in fact, on my Instagram, and I just swapped around my stuff that's pinned, put some nice cards at the top. But the very first post I have on my Instagram is a start over. It's a sign that says start over. And then I made a long paragraph about that, of walking in and you go down and I'm like, oh, I spent $400 or $500 on a Barry Bonds gold chrome from O2 Tops. That's super cool. That's not what I like, and I know it's not. I like Hall of Fame baseball, game used, and autographs. I think I might own 4 cards from active players, maybe. I have an Acuna auto, and gosh, I can't even think if there's anything else. It may be less than 4, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's just stuff like that I like, but it's constant. In fact, 90% of the stuff I sell, I would consider it a mistake. I bought it and I was like, oh, like I really like this. And then 6 months later, I'm like, why do I own this? I don't, this isn't what I like. This doesn't, when I look through it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's that, like there's that. But yeah, so for me, and a lot of my collection before was built on that. The Hall of Fame game use stuff. There was more active players in that stuff because it was like stuff I pulled out of current products. There was a few players that, speaking of mistakes, that I collected. Travis Hafner, Jason Bay, some of those guys that were up. Were kind of the guys in 07, 08, 09, and then like never really panned out to have great careers. And so Roy Oswalt was another one that modern guys like that I collected, but I knew now coming back, I may get 1 or 2 things from some of the guys that I think are the undeniables right now. Like a Judge, for example, superstar, megastar. Ohtani, don't have anything of his, but something that I am going to get eventually, because I just don't think he goes away. A Judge doesn't fade away. Those guys are pretty well established, but I've been in long enough to know and kind of see the whole, Pete Crow Armstrong, for example, he's one. Like right now I'm having FOMO. And I'm fighting every demon inside me not to go buy some PCA stuff as a Cubs fan, as the hype around him, that it's popular right now. And I know it's not the time, and I know that probably in a couple of years, man, I hope he continues to be a megastar, on the Cubs. But I've been down enough of those roads to know that, like, okay, this is, if I'm looking at stuff outside my lanes, and I've got some 3 buddies that I'll call accountability partners. I'll shoot them over something. And I'm like, hey, here's what I'm thinking on this. I'm going to buy this lot of 5 things. 4 of them aren't me, and 1 of them is me. What do you guys think about this? And they're like, oh man, like I thought you were into the Hall of Fame game. You know what? You're right. I appreciate that. Thank you. So let's get back on course. So
that's great. So there are some folks who, sold their whole collections and maybe wish they hadn't, like you. There are some who sell them and are glad that they did. They're glad that they moved off of it. So as we wind down here, if somebody came to you for a consult and said, I'm thinking about selling my entire collection, what questions would you maybe want to ask them, or what would you want to find out before you gave some advice one way or the other?
Sure. So first thing I'd ask is how you acquired them. What does that look like? Are there stories tied to those? Did you buy a big lot and now that's your collection? Have you amassed it over years? Have you done it with friends? That'd be the first step. Second step is like, okay, and this was a lot for me, like, what do you plan to do with the money? So you're getting rid of if these are sentimental items, and you're going to get rid of sentimental items that are tied to memories or core memories for you. What are you going to do with that money when you get it that's going to give you this fulfillment, or that fulfillment that the cards gave you? And then, lastly is like, okay, so if you're going to re-enter, much like me, what are you going to do differently? And so I think all 3 of those are things to consider, of like, we don't know what we have until it's gone, right? That's the saying. And so once these things are gone, like, how are you really going to feel about that? Because in the emotion of the moment, you're like, man, I just got to get out of this. Like maybe you got a couple of bad beats, right? Collected a couple of bad players, and you're just going to take some hits and take some losses. You say, man, I'm never doing this again. Yeah, until a couple of days later when it's calmed down and you realize, it was just X number of dollars that I lost on that, like live and learn type situation. So mistakes and failures happen. You can't let them get you down, man. It's just cardboard. But the memories is the stuff that what I'd say that you can't replace.
Robert M_cards on Instagram. Thanks for sharing your story. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.